Lou. How are you?
Good, Wanda. It's so great to get to spend some time with you.
Same here. Same here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I owe a special thanks to all the folks behind the scenes at Authors on Air for making this possible for us. Lou Berney, and I'll just read your bio really briefly in case people aren't familiar with your work. And if they aren't, do something about that. Um, Lou Berney is the author of the novels Dark Ride, November Road, The Long and Faraway Gone, Whiplash River, and Gut Shot Straight. His books have won the Edgar, Hammett, Steel Dagger, Barry, McCavity, Lefty, and Anthony Awards. And he has been a finalist twice for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize. His short fiction has appeared in publications such as The New Yorker, Plowshares, and the Pushcart Prize anthology, and he teaches at the Oklahoma City University. So this is such a treat for me. I am going to open up first, Lou, by telling you about the first time we met. And don't worry about trying to remember because you weren't there. Here is how we met. It was, I want to say it was like 2018, and I was unpublished. I didn't even have an agent. I was getting rejection letters by the fistful. I'd send something out and my computer would go bing. And I walked into a bookstore one day and your book was sitting on a table. And I picked it up and I read the opening paragraph. I usually don't read the backs of the books. I read the first couple paragraphs. And I read the first paragraph and I was immediately transported to New Orleans because the book was November Road. And I bought that book and I read it in a day and a half. And I think the only reason why it took me that long was because I had carpool duty.
Oh.
So it was a phenomenal book. And I finished reading it. And I remember saying to myself, that's how you tell a story. That's what I want to do.
Oh man, that's such high praise from you. I really
It was
appreciate
an
it.
incredible book. And I went back and bought all your others. So all that's to say that I truly admire you as a writer. And I thought, rather than kind of asking questions about, books in particular, maybe let's just talk about the craft of writing.
Love it. Yeah.
I admire what you do, obviously, but I always like to kind of crawl into the minds of writers whose work I admire and ask, how do you do that? And for example, your characters always leap off the page, literally. Your new book coming out November 5th, I believe it is.
Yep.
Double Barrel Bluff by Lou Berney. Guys, you've got to go out and get this. The characters in this book, in all your books, seem to kind of leap off the page. What do you do as you're writing? Do you sit and you think about your characters for a while, you know who they are, or once you get into the writing, you kind of figure out what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And by the way, when I first read you, Wanda, the book was sent to me from my publisher, and I did the same thing. I sat down and I was like, I'm just going to read a couple pages before dinner. And next thing I knew, it was like, 10 o'clock and I was already like halfway through the book. So, but again, like with your stuff, it's character is the most important thing. I think we're probably in agreement on that it's just so important to storytelling. And I wish I had an easy recipe for great characters that I could just whip that up on demand. But a lot of it is, like you said, just kind of living with them for a while and getting to know them and finding the ones that are leaping off the page and cutting the ones that aren't, and I think in the end, it comes down to knowing them as well as you can and getting as close to them as you can and just trying to see from the inside out as much as you can. Is that the same for you, kind of?
Yeah, it really is. And it's so funny too, because I'll start off with a character in my mind and I kind of envision her one way. And as I start to read the story, she or he can start to evolve, particularly when I put the secondary characters around the protagonist and the antagonist. and then to watch how the characters kind of bounce off of each other, then I start to say, yeah, this character needs to be, I need to tweak this or tweak that. But there's something in kind of the descriptions of your characters that I just love. You bring a character onto the page and I can immediately picture them.
Oh, good, good.
You don't do it with a lot of description, like, he had brown hair and
Yeah, no, I hate that.
right?
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about that because I know there are, writers out there who, a lot of times they write a character and the character feels stilted. How do you prevent that from happening?
I think it comes down to just I kind of have a rule of thumb with that. I try to like introduce a character with a sentence or two capturing some essential quality of who they are to make them memorable, both to me and the reader. Like, I mean, in some ways, it's like talking to myself as much as it is to the reader. But like, okay,
Mm.
like what's the central quality of this character, and how can I capture it? But like you said, a lot of times characters change and evolve, and so that's part of the revision process is realizing, oh, this character I thought was one way at the beginning of the project actually turned out to be quite different, and now I have to go back and sort of shape it that way. And I don't know about you, but I love when characters start doing things that surprise me on the page. I feel like that's when things are working well.
Yeah, yeah, there's something about that serendipity where you
Mhm.
kind of are writing along and then you connect two things up or a character, you write a line for a character, you're like, oh, yeah, that's good.
100%. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's just a line. Sometimes it's a word even. You're like, oh,
Yeah,
that unlocks the mystery of that character.
yeah.
And that's why secondary characters are so important too. Because once you put it's like pool like a pool table with all the balls bouncing off each other.
Mhm.
It just creates this energy and characters are revealed in a way, I think, when they're interacting and acting that they aren't when they're just sort of in static situations. So part of it for a writer, I think, is giving the characters their best opportunity to reveal themselves. That's what we can kind of do is put them in a good situation to reveal themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way. I always tell writers to, if I'm doing a workshop or something, that, you know, make sure your secondary characters have a purpose beyond being
Mhm.
there to kind of lift up the antagonist or the protagonist. And, not so much like, they're there to be the sidekick friend or something, but like they have backstories too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You don't have to go into some long drawn out description of the backstory, but maybe they use a phrase or maybe they mention a relative in a certain way and you think, "Oh, there's something there too." Like bring the secondary characters to life as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That like secondary characters are not secondary characters in other stories. They're main characters in their own lives, and so I always try to just sort of imagine, okay, what's going on? What's a hint? Like you said, it could just be a little thing, just a hint at this
Mhm.
rich life beyond the edges of the novel or the current novel. Like I can't remember who I told me that, or I read it someone long ago that like a good novel doesn't have edges. It's just it
Mm.
spills over and it feels like there's a lot that exists all around it. And you're just sort of just taking a chunk out of the middle, but there's a lot of stuff going on around it. And I love novels that feel that way.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. So, look, you and I know as writing professionals in this industry that, the writing journey does not go in a straight line, right? You
No.
you got
Mm.
curves and turns and dips and
Way dips, and then yeah, you got all sorts of stuff going on. Yeah.
exactly. And so I remember watching an interview of you, and you were telling the interviewer how you had worked on a book for a couple years,
Mhm.
3 years, and the book wasn't working. And you wound up having to like put that book away. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what that process is like. Like, how did you know that that book wasn't working, that that was not going to be the one? I'm asking for a friend
Oh
when
yeah. Uh, well, I'm not sure I have any good advice because I didn't realize it for 2 years. So I realized that way too late that it wasn't working. And I feel like I'm going to sound like some, new age guru, but I just feel like a lot of it comes down to feel in my stomach.
Mm,
Like, uh, there are times when my stomach will just tighten up and it feels wrong what I'm doing. And a lot of times I come from, a family where hard work was prized and, you just put your head down and you keep working. So that's my instinct. But, and that's a good quality, I think, for writers to resilience and defiance and all that. But there are times when you're just banging your head against a brick wall and there's
mm,
another brick wall behind that brick wall and you have to figure out when to stop. And uh, now I trust myself a little bit more, my feelings about it. And if that warning bell goes off and it feels wrong, I will stop and then think about it and try to figure it out analytically. Like, why do I feel that way? What's wrong about this? And
yeah.
I'm hoping that has the last couple of books helped me, kind of get a better grip on the big picture of it. But I also think, I mean, I don't know if you agree with this. I think part of writing, part of art is making mistakes and
Yeah.
screwing up. And it's just part of the process. Like I think as a writer or anybody who creates something original, you're gonna like step off a cliff every now and then and end
Mm.
up breaking every bone at the bottom of the cliff and then trying something else. So I think that's just a kind of a built-in risk that you can't be too scared of, or you'll never really do anything that interesting.
I agree with that. I know a lot of people, who write, they are very much afraid of, the rejection that comes because there's a
Mhm.
lot of rejection in this business. No doubt about that. I won't sugarcoat that. But I think that there is also something about, like you said, listening to your gut and also being kind to yourself, right? When something is not working, you can't beat yourself up about that. You've got to get back in there and give it another shot, don't you think?
100%. I mean, I think that's been my big change as a writer over the last several years is just instead of like hating myself for screwing up, it's
Mhm.
just accepting that like that's part of the job. You're going to screw up to get somewhere better and good. And it just takes then I screw up less because you take that pressure off yourself
Right.
and you're like, okay, I'm going to be kind to myself and, just work hard, but be kind. And then it just takes this big pressure off your back and you don't feel like you can't not screw up anymore. So I
Yeah,
agree with that completely.
yeah.
Because there is so much rejection, in our
Mhm.
business and it's never fun. And like you said, it's not a straight line. It's usually a lot of dips and curves and scary moments. But again, the more you can reach acceptance of that and say like, you know what, tomorrow's going to be a better day. I think the happier we are as writers.
Yeah, I agree. So before we wrap up, maybe you could spend a few minutes talking about either the best piece of writing advice you ever got or the writing advice that you usually give to people.
Oh, that's a good question. I think the one that I usually give is the one I usually give myself too, which is to um, write. Let's see if I can say this right. I always get to write what only you do best. Like, and by that I guess I mean like find out what you do best and then do that thing. Because kind of when I was younger, I would always like I'd read a book and I'd be trying to be that person. I'll try to write
Mhm.
like that, or I'll try to do this, and I could be good at that. Like I'm a good writer, but I'm not at my best unless I'm doing what is just me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, that makes absolute sense. I remember like all those times that was, I wasn't published, I wasn't agented, and I would read a book and, the way they turned a phrase or the flowery language they use, and I thought, oh, but I can't do that. I don't do that well. And if you've read any of my books, I don't have a lot of that. And so I know exactly what you mean. I had to learn to lean into that which I do well.
Right, because you do it really well. Like what you do extraordinarily well. But we wouldn't have the benefit of that if you were doing something else. You know what I mean? Like it's like
Yeah.
I want to read a Wanda Morris novel, you know, and I think that's the kind of thing to sort of let yourself do as much as possible. And I don't know if it's just the fact of getting old, like I'm an old man now. So maybe I just had learned, you know, I wish I'd learned this 40 years ago, maybe when I was in college, but I feel like I just have found peace in being imperfect, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. There is something about being at a stage in your life where the angst of the things that used to like make your skin crawl, you're like, you know what? Nah, life is short and time is finite. I'm not gonna dip into all of that. And
Right.
I try to remember that now, and I'm thankful for that. Because I'm like, this business could really wear you down.
Mhm.
And unless you are kind of, stable in who you are and
Mhm.
what you want to do, and you lean in and focus on
Mhm.
that thing, you could kind of lose your way. And I always tell writers, eh, write the story that you want to write.
Yeah. Yeah.
know, and some people will like it, some people won't. I mean, as you stated earlier, writing is an art form, and art is subjective. And so
Mhm.
some people like the art you create and some people don't. But to your point, I wholeheartedly agree. You need to learn to trust your gut. And I think some of that comes with maturity and
Yeah.
season.
I think so. I think I agree with that.
Yeah. You working on anything new that you want to tell us about?
I'm always working on something new, but I am very superstitious about talking about anything I'm working on because I worry that somehow that'll like give me bad luck. I don't know. It's a
Bad
crazy thing.
juju, huh? I
Bad
love
juju. Yeah. I just like I'm super. How about you? What are you working on something new?
I'm like you. I'm always working on something new. I'm at this point where I've just finished up a book and I'm trying to figure out, is this, I'm in the midst of revisions. And so that question I asked earlier, I'm like, is this really working? And so hopefully, editors and agents will think it is. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll
Right.
see.
Right.
We will see. But listen, before I let you go, first and foremost, thank you again.
Thank you.
No, you are always so kind and generous. And anybody who bought my second book, Anywhere You Run, will see your name on the
Yeah.
front
I know. I
cover.
was
I
flattered by that. I
appreciate
was like, that is so cool.
that.
I love
Thank
that.
you. Thank you for that.
Anthony Award winner, I believe it was, right?
It was. It
Yeah.
was. So thank you for that. And then folks, go out November 5th, Double Barrel Bluff by Lou
Yeah.
Berney.
You don't have to think about the election on November 5th.
That's right.
You
That's
just
right.
don't want to be thinking about, you want to read something that's
Go
fun.
vote, though. Go
Vote
vote.
first. Thank you. Vote
Vote first
first.
and then
Yes.
go read
Good point.
this.
Vote first.
Lou, it has been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, Wanda. I can't wait to see you again in person. So
Same here. Take care.
take care. Bye.
Bye.